Okay, so I guess this is going to be one of my first YouTube videos. Normally, in Facebook Live, I do something called talking and drawing. Unfortunately, with YouTube, I guess they need 24 hours to validate my account. So this won't be a live video. This is just going to be a video in general. So I had on my table a character with metallic skin, so I kind of wanted this to be interesting. Metallic finishing style is kind of like something I liked a lot as a kid because I was a big fan of the character Silver Surfer, which was drawn by the great artist Ron Lim. If you guys aren't familiar, I mean, that was a character that was basically all metallic. Originally, the character was drawn by Jack Kirby, later by John Buscema, but it really wasn't until later on that people actually tried to give the character like more of a chrome finish, which was based on the character. His skin was coated in this power cosmic. Now I just sound like a dork. Anyways, all you need to know was the guy was like made out of metallic silver or whatever. So, that brings us today, and this moment in time where we're reunited. And hopefully some of you guys are aspiring comic artists, and you come across metal, and metal casting light. And you kind of wonder, well, how do I draw metallic and give a sense of depth and, space and stuff like that? And pretty much you have, a dimensional object and it's covered in metal, so you still got to establish your gray tones and whatnot. And I guess you really won't come across this too much, but on certain characters. And I'm drawing Exo Manowar, and this would be one of those characters that was notorious for being drawn in metallic, and because of the musculature and anatomy, you end up with a lot of curvatures and trying to display depth. And a lot of people in comic artwork, you end up developing a finishing style that gives a sense of, shadow crevices and whatnot. Right now I'm shading in his ribcage area here to kind of make him look more in like a six-pack type of barbarian guy. So, and you always need like these heavy black areas on the figure to kind of, register as some sort of, pocket of shadow from a muscle protruding. I know that sounds weird, but that's pretty much what you're trying to do. I mean, it's very important that you establish a certain amount of blacks, whites, and grays in your drawing style, especially when you're trying to draw an anatomical form. So with this character Exo, I'm basically at this point in the stage where I'm developing some grays, but I'm also trying to develop highlights, like say here in the bicep, dark areas, and some gray in between, where, especially with metallic, there's a lot of light casting, and you're going to say, well, Shane, why are you making everything so complicated? I suggest if anybody's going to draw much of anything metallic, to find something sort of metallic. This is like a, let me see if I get different lighting on this. This is a cheap Darth Vader underwear, so now you guys know I have Darth Vader underwear on. It was a container I got from Target. I was like, hey, I need some new underwear anyways. But I bought it because this was a nice tool just at the drawing table. And you'll see here, would be the highlight, and this would be dark. And this is all being cast, of course, by my lamp. And you're going to see, like, there's a height right there. That's the part I'm talking about. So here, well, see, I move it and the glare changes, but there's going to be the highest highlight here or here, but there's this black area in between. So it's stuff like that, like that you kind of, first you kind of have to understand the anatomical shape, but then you kind of need to understand how chrome or metallic reflects because sometimes there's primary lighting and then secondary lighting. See here where my hand's reflecting. So there's, even when light hits something, it refracts and bounces back. So you end up with like not just a light source that's hitting something, which would be the bicep main area here, but you would also have light from the ground bouncing back up. And that's where a lot of people with anatomy end up with like what I would say a dual tone, or not dual tone, but they end up with like center shadowing where there's like almost seems like a halo lighting. Here's a picture of a soldier in a helmet, and you'll see more what I'm talking about here. How, like, you know, there's a light area here, light area here, light area here. So a lot of this is reflective lighting bouncing around. But, you know, what really makes chrome look like chrome or metallic finishing is, you know, white, dark, and this little gray area in here that I'm pointing out on the helmet. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'll go in a little closer. This is exactly that area that I'm talking about with these little sickle shapes I'm drawing. That and what happens is color's going to come in here in those areas, those little gray areas in here, and that color is going to go in there and it's going to read as like a gray, as if I was, you know, cross feathering, you know, an area, if that makes sense. So it's basically the same math and anatomy, but you're doing it in a different, I don't know the word. It's still the same concept. You have to go by the same math and same formula. It's basically the same formula as drawing superhero anatomy, except instead of feathering, you're making, you know, a gray area out of chrome swiggles, but you still have to dictate your highlights and your shadows. And that seems super complicated. And honestly, maybe I'm talking way too complicated about simple things. I'd like to think I don't overcomplicate things, but I sit at my table a lot, so I know I overcomplicate things. That's kind of the perils of a comic artist, especially if you're wanting to become a better artist. It's usually something you're going to be dealing with a lot. So hopefully that makes sense to some of you guys. So right now I'm basically going to let me see, what am I going to do, Shane? What are you going to do? Let's work on this helmet up here. This character has like this like headlight thing up here, so I gotta first establish that. Sometimes I really wish this was live because I'd see some comments and I could interact with you guys, but like I said, I got a 24-hour grace period. Probably some NSA shit, right? Where they gotta crawl up me, make sure like I'm not, you know, advocating something on my YouTube feed or whatever. Okay, so once I got my headlight lamp thing here in the character dictated, I'm going to establish a type of, it's good to have reference. Even if your reference isn't what you're drawing, it's always good. So I'm going to say like I got to dictate some type of shadow in this area here, and this is going to separate a highlight and probably make like a mid-tone area. So this actually serves a purpose. It's not just pretty lines. I'm actually kind of dictating that light's coming from above here. So this should be, I think some of the term people use is rim lighting, but I've always felt that term applied more towards like anatomy, just not metal. It's probably still the same term. You know, a lot of artists in the 80s just dealt with this stuff with airbrush, so this is kind of like something that's kind of special to the pen and ink part of comic books, and there's really not a lot of characters that have this trait on it. I mean, even if it's a robot and it's metallic, like unless it's got like a lot of round areas, you really don't end up with this technique too much. And you'll even notice there's more of this stuff going on in the guy's helmet than there is other metal plates on his body. It's really got more to do with round surfaces. So what I'm doing is I'm making like a little lip where the shadows don't really butt up. One side butts up against the seam in his suit or his helmet, and then the other doesn't. So after I establish that area, I'm probably gonna, I don't have my electric eraser. I'm gonna run over here and I'm going to break off here and I'm gonna, arc this up, and I'm leaving myself some room for those gray area swiggles I'm talking about. And swiggles is not the correct term. I'm always very, and this is a personal finishing style thing, but I'm always not somebody that wants to jump off the cliff and just commit to a heavy black and white contrast style. I do like grays in my line artwork. I think that works for some people's style, and a lot of times the simpler your style is, or the more goth or noir type style or stuff, it works. So like some of this, really depending on your finishing style, is more or less. There's no perfect math to this. An old school, there used to be an old school, the reason also I'm butting up a lot of the heavy black areas against this headlight thing here is to build a contrast of it casting light. So, it's good to think about color. Like I know this piece here, this wedge is going to emit light, so it's good to butt up against black areas against it. And, I'm keeping, in mind the contour of the helmet. I started with this, if you scroll back in the video, I already had set the shadows of his eye and cheekbone here into the window of the helmet. So, now you can see how like I've shadowed this area, and now I'm, making what I would call a visual continuity. Some people would say, oh, well, my style is I just leave that open and the colorist figures out this. And especially with computer coloring today, a lot of people can model all that for you. And that's up to you. But when you do that, and there are plenty of great colorists out there that can do that, understand that you are leaving up to the deadline, the day, the colorist to dictate your dimensions. And that's all on you. You're making that choice. A colorist, may not have the time, which they probably do, but you're also just putting a lot of faith in something. And what if all of a sudden that colorist can't, because of another book, do that page or your cover or something? Then you're left leaving all that up to the guy that you had this great working relationship to, and now it goes to another guy, and maybe you have different results. So I personally try to not dictate, but I try to, I guess I am dictating, but I'm trying to establish light and shadow, and I'm not trying to step on that colorist's toes or anything. I know they could model that stuff, but if I leave it up to them, they may think, that's a big area that could just go wrong. And nothing against that colorist, but maybe we haven't worked together enough. Maybe, and at that point, when you leave that stuff up to coloring, and if you're not coloring it yourself, it can influence your style. So if I left that stuff up to the colorist, all of a sudden this might not even look like I drew it. Now, that's not an ego thing, of course. To some people it would be, but I have to I have to assume that the editor wanted me to draw the piece because I'm been asked to draw the piece. So if I don't if it does, in the end, if it doesn't look like I drew it, the editor might not like it in the end, and you might not know where it went wrong, even. It's really nobody's fault, but it may reflect bad on me if it doesn't look like I drew it. And that's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help the colorist color me on something else. It's not because the editor won't think I'm going to deliver on it. So it just, so then he's not coloring me on something else, and, it can. So to some degree, I kind of understand some artists that leave this stuff up to coloring, because coloring is a lot advanced, but at the same time, there's a lot of pitfalls to that too. You could end up, and if you color yourself and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to do this with some brushes in Photoshop, that's great. That is awesome. You become a really famous artist, more power to you with your brushes, and you're leaving that up to brushes and not actual drawing. And it might even be more elite, but because you built that style off of brushes in Photoshop, like my chrome line work here has a flare to it that looks like I did it. If I had a brush in Photoshop, if I created that brush, until somebody emulates that brush, then all of a sudden they have my finishing style. And that's, again, my other problem with the Photoshop building a brush, or a technique, is because when you build a finishing style that can be emulated, trust me, there will be an up-and-coming artist or somebody that wants to copy that and emulate that, and, and you can see, you can probably roll back to the video and see how the eye was before. I'm going to hold this a little bit closer. There you can see how I drew the, the chrome, and now it kind of feels in continuity, the chrome of his helmet to his eye that's shadowed, in the window there. There's some close-up of the chrome line artwork in the arm, and you can kind of see, how I'm using black, white areas and gray areas all together. So hopefully that was somewhat educational. I would, if you have the ability, don't know where I laid that, and again, that's going to be a problem with being a comic artist. Invest in anything you can find that's orb shaped, chrome, that has, I found this to be, a really good piece because it had different crevices and it had a dome area too, but, even like there's a seam, I can see how there's a white crevice, how the seams dictate through the dark areas of the chrome. Find something small, cheap, that's chrome, a trinket like this. Wear yourself some Darth Vader underwear, be a man, but whatever. But, I'm a comic artist. I can wear whatever underwear I want. But anyways, something like this just to have by at your table is honestly really good. And you might never use it, but trust me, there'll be some character somewhere you're going to get assigned to you, you're going to have to draw. And if you see something like this, pick it up, put it in your studio somewhere, out of sight, out of mind, and then one day you'll be like, oh my god, I need this, let me pick this up, because I now have to draw this chrome character. It's better to have reference laying around, and then one day need it, and then it's there, than to have to run out in the streets on some crazy deadline and find your reference. So keep that in mind too. So if you ever see something cheap like this in a department store or something, and you're like, oh my god, that looks very Silver Surfer-y, but not Silver Surfer-y, and what if one day I drew Silver Surfer? Just pick it up if it's a few bucks. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of headaches. It's a real pro tip there. And it's good talking to you guys. I'll try to do more of these as certain things come along, and I'm like, hey, this might be advantageous to someone. And, share my YouTube channel. I'll try to post on this as much as I can. Talking and drawing is something I like to do on Facebook Lives. I'm of course not live now, but hopefully, in 24 hours, the NSA says I'm okay and we can go live. Talk to you guys later. Keep drawing. Bye.